What happens when raw talent collides with corporate arrogance? This is the story of Zara Washington, a 17-year-old artist from Atlanta with a gift bigger than her circumstances, and Alistair Finch, a powerful CEO who, in a moment of casual dismissal, challenged her to draw something funny. He expected a cartoon. He got a $5 million idea that would either be his salvation or his ruin. This isn't just a story about an ad campaign. It's about the fight for a voice, the price of authenticity, and what happens when the underestimated find their power. Stay with us. The smell of turpentine and spray paint was Zara Washington's sanctuary. It was the scent of creation, a sharp, chemical perfume that clung to the cramped back porch of her grandmother's house in Atlanta's West End. At 17, Zara saw the world in layers of color and light, in the sharp angles of shadows cast by the setting sun on chain-link fences, and in the kaleidoscope of expressions on the faces of people in her community. Her sketchbook was a second heart, pumping life onto pages in strokes of charcoal, graphite, and ink. It was where she processed the world, a world that often felt heavy. The weight came from all sides. It was in the weary lines around her mother's eyes when she came home from a 12-hour shift as a nurse at Grady Hospital. It was in the strained silence at the dinner table when bills were the unspoken topic. It was in the gentle sag of the porch steps, a constant reminder of the repairs they couldn't afford. Zara's art was her escape, but it was also her rebellion. In her drawings, the tired faces of her neighbors were imbued with a regal dignity. The cracked sidewalks bloomed with imagined, vibrant flowers. She didn't draw a fantasy world. She drew the truth of her world, infused with the beauty and strength she knew existed within it. Her mother, Denise, supported her passion with a pragmatist's caution. "That's beautiful, baby," she'd say, looking over Zara's shoulder at a portrait so lifelike it seemed to breathe. "You've got a gift from God. Just make sure you've got a plan to pay the light bill with it." Denise's plan for Zara involved scholarships, a degree in graphic design from a state school, something practical, safe. For Zara, the dream was bigger, more terrifying, and far less defined. It was a raw, aching need to create, to have her vision seen and understood on a grand scale. It was a dream that felt 1,000,000 miles away from the splintering wood of the back porch, 50 miles north, in a glass and steel tower in Buckhead that scraped the clouds. Alistair Finch felt a different kind of weight. His was the pressure of shareholder expectations and declining market share. As the CEO of Aura Fizz, one of the nation's largest beverage companies, he presided over an empire of carbonated sugar water. For decades, Aura Fizz had been an icon of American refreshment, its ads filled with smiling, beautiful people on sun-drenched beaches and at vibrant parties. But the fizz was going flat. Their demographic was aging. Gen Z saw Aura Fizz as their parents' drink, stale, artificial, and painfully out of touch. Sales had dipped for the third consecutive quarter. The board was restless. Alistair, a man in his late 40s with a carefully maintained tan and a wardrobe of bespoke suits, felt the chill of impending failure. He was a master of the corporate game, a shark in a world of sharks. But he couldn't seem to crack this one problem. "We need a reset," he'd declared that morning in a tense meeting with his marketing team and their high-priced ad agency. "We need something viral, something authentic, something that connects with youth." The word authentic was thrown around the boardroom like a life raft. The agency, led by a seasoned and cynical creative director named Eleanor Vance, presented storyboards featuring impossibly cool influencers, skateboarding in slow motion, and laughing with perfectly white teeth. Alistair had nearly thrown the expensive mock-ups across the table. "This isn't authentic. This is a parody of authenticity," he'd fumed. It's what a bunch of 50-year-olds in a boardroom think young people find authentic. We're losing, and we're losing badly. It was then that a junior executive, a young, eager-to-please man from PR, had pitched a small, low-risk idea. Mr. Finch, what if we engage the community directly? We could launch a citywide art contest, Atlanta's Aura. We target high school and college students. Ask them to submit art that captures the spirit of Atlanta. The prize could be a scholarship, a tour of the headquarters. It's great PR, shows we're invested in the community, and who knows? Maybe we find some fresh ideas. Alistair had initially scoffed. A local art contest? It was small time, a rounding error in their billion-dollar marketing budget. But he was desperate, and the phrase, fresh ideas, stuck with him. Fine, he'd snapped, waving a dismissive hand. Do it. A $10,000 scholarship, a tour of this glass prison. Make it happen. Just don't bother me with the details unless a miracle walks through the door. The contest was launched with a slick social media campaign and flyers sent to every high school in the metro area. For Aura Fizz, it was a low-cost PR stunt. For Zara Washington, who saw the flyer tacked to a crowded bulletin board at her school, it was something else entirely. It wasn't the $10,000 scholarship that caught her eye, though God knew her family needed it. It was the promise of a tour. The chance, however small, to step inside the world where decisions were made, where art wasn't just a hobby on a back porch but a force that shaped culture. The chance to be seen. That evening, she didn't draw. She sat on the porch, the flyer in her hand, the smell of turpentine a familiar comfort. She thought about the spirit of Atlanta. The contest guidelines asked for submissions that were uplifting, vibrant, and fun, words that felt like they belonged to a different city than the one she knew. Her Atlanta was resilient, complex, and beautiful in its imperfections. It was the soulful graffiti under the I-20 overpass, the rhythm of a gospel choir spilling out of a church, the shared laughter of old men playing checkers in the park. Could she capture that spirit in a way they would understand? Could she make them see? She picked up a fresh piece of Bristol board. She wasn't going to paint them a picture of a fizzy, bubbly, branded world. She was going to show them her own. The deadline for the Atlanta's Aura contest loomed, and the submissions that flooded Aura Fizz's corporate servers were a predictable wave of sanitized optimism. There were countless digital renderings of the Atlanta skyline, stylized peaches, and illustrations of smiling, diverse friend groups clinking cans of Aura Fizz. They were bright, competent, and utterly soulless, perfectly aligned with the contest's call for uplifting, vibrant, and fun. Inside the marketing department, a small team was tasked with sorting through the entries. Among them was Marcus Vance, a 28-year-old brand manager who was sharp, ambitious, and one of the few black executives at his level. He navigated the corporate culture at Aura Fizz with a careful blend of savvy and code switching, fully aware that he had to work twice as hard to get half as far. He found the contest patronizing, another hollow gesture from a company that talked about diversity but rarely practiced it. His job was to help find the top 20 finalists to present to the senior panel. It was a tedious task, and after 100 nearly identical images of the King and Queen buildings, his eyes were glazing over. Then he saw Zara's submission. It stopped him cold. It wasn't a digital illustration, but a high-resolution photo of a mixed media piece. The canvas was a collage of textures, scraps of newspaper, worn denim, and painted-over bus schedules. At its center was a portrait of an old woman, her face a road map of wrinkles, her eyes holding a universe of stories. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, were clasped around a single, perfect magnolia blossom. The background wasn't the gleaming skyline of Buckhead, but the vibrant, chaotic energy of a neighborhood street, a mural-covered wall, the silhouette of a MARTA bus, the faint outline of kids playing stickball. The piece wasn't fun in the way Aura Fizz defined it. It was profound. It was raw, honest, and achingly beautiful. The title she'd given it was Where the Roots Grow Deep. Marcus stared at the image, feeling a powerful connection to it. This was the Atlanta he knew. The soul of the city wasn't in the glass towers. It was in the resilience of its people, in the history etched into faces like the one in the portrait. He immediately moved it to the finalist folder. When the selection committee met, Zara's piece stood out like a sore thumb. Eleanor Vance, the ad agency's creative director, was on the panel, her expression one of bored impatience. "What is this?" she asked, gesturing to the projection of Zara's artwork. "It's technically skilled, I'll grant you, but it's depressing. Our brand is about effervescence, joy. This is a gritty social documentary. It's completely off-brand." A few others murmured in agreement. They were looking for something they could slap on a billboard. Marcus spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "I disagree. I think it's the most on-brand piece we've received." Eleanor raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "How do you figure, Marcus?" "Our brand is failing because we're not authentic," he said, choosing his words carefully. "We're trying to sell an idea of joy that no one believes in. This piece, this has soul. It's about finding beauty and strength in real life. That's a powerful message. It's what people are craving." "People are craving a sugar rush, not a lecture on urban struggle," Eleanor retorted dismissively. The debate went on. Marcus fought for it, arguing that if they were serious about finding a fresh idea, they had to be willing to look at something that made them uncomfortable. He knew he was taking a risk. Championing the difficult black girl's art was a move that could brand him as a troublemaker. But he couldn't let them discard it. In the end, they reached a compromise born of corporate cowardice. They couldn't make her the grand prize winner. Her art was too challenging, too off-message. But Marcus's passionate defense had shamed them into acknowledging its merit. They awarded Zara the third-place prize, a token scholarship of $1,000, and the promised tour of the Aura Fizz headquarters. The grand prize went to a bland, corporate-friendly digital art piece of the skyline, which was promptly forgotten. When Zara got the email, her heart performed a complicated mix of sinking and soaring. Third place. It felt like a consolation prize, a pat on the head. The money would barely cover the cost of her art supplies for the year. But then she remembered the other part of the prize. The tour. The chance to get inside. The day of the tour was a surreal experience. Zara, dressed in her best jeans and a simple black top, felt like she had crossed into another dimension. The Aura Fizz headquarters was an architectural marvel of sterile beauty. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off polished chrome and illuminating modern art that was as expensive as it was emotionally vacant. The air was cool and smelled faintly of money and air freshener. She and the other two winners were led by a cheerful, overly caffeinated PR guide. Zara was quiet, absorbing everything. She saw the rows of cubicles, the hushed conference rooms, the employees with their fixed professional smiles. It was a world away from the vibrant, noisy life she captured in her art. The tour culminated in a brief, awkward meeting in a top-floor conference room with a panoramic view of the city. And there he was, Alistair Finch. He strode in, radiating an aura of power and impatience, flanked by Eleanor Vance and a few other executives. He offered the winners a tight, practiced smile. "Congratulations," he said, his voice smooth but distant. He shook their hands, his grip firm and brief. He gave a short, canned speech about innovation and the power of youth. Zara could feel the insincerity radiating from him. He hadn't even looked at their art. As the meeting was wrapping up, Marcus Vance, who had been standing quietly in the back, stepped forward. "Mr. Finch, this is Zara Washington," he said, gesturing toward her. "The artist behind Where the Roots Grow Deep. I believe you'll find her portfolio compelling." He handed Alistair a tablet displaying Zara's work. Alistair took it, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face at this unplanned extension of the meeting. He swiped through her pieces. He saw the portraits, the street scenes, the raw emotion. He was silent for a long moment. Then he looked up. Not at Marcus, but directly at Zara. He handed the tablet back to his assistant. "You're talented, kid," he said, his tone a masterclass in condescension. "Very evocative." He paused, a small patronizing smile playing on his lips. "But this is all a bit heavy. This isn't what sells soda. For our next big campaign, we need something fun, light. We're trying to sell happiness in a can." He gestured to a blank whiteboard in the corner of the room. "Go on," he said, his voice laced with the casual cruelty of a man who had never been told no. "Draw something funny for me, right now." The room fell silent. The other winners stared at their shoes. Eleanor Vance smirked. Marcus's jaw tightened. For Zara, the world seemed to slow down. The air conditioning hummed. The command hung in the air, a blatant dismissal of her entire artistic identity. Draw something funny. It was a test, a challenge, and an insult all at once. He was telling her that her truth was worthless. Humiliation washed over her, hot and sharp. Her first instinct was to turn and walk out. But then, a different feeling rose up from deep within her. A cold, defiant fire. He wanted something funny? Fine. She would give him something he would never forget. The silence in the conference room stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Every eye was on Zara. Alistair Finch stood with his arms crossed, a look of smug expectation on his face. He had thrown down a gauntlet, expecting either timid compliance or a flustered refusal. He did not expect the quiet storm that was gathering in Zara Washington's eyes. For a moment she just looked at him, her gaze steady and unblinking. She wasn't seeing a CEO. She was seeing a man completely disconnected from the world he was trying to sell to. A man who thought happiness was a simple, marketable commodity, like sugar or carbonation. The humiliation that had flared in her chest began to cool, replaced by a crystalline, razor-sharp clarity. She walked over to the whiteboard without a word. Her movements were deliberate, not angry, but filled with a potent sense of purpose. She picked up a black, dry erase marker, the plastic cool against her skin. The cap clicked off with a sound that seemed to echo in the cavernous room. Alistair leaned back against the conference table, ready to be entertained by the little girl's cartoon. Eleanor Vance exchanged a look with one of her colleagues, a silent mockery of the entire situation. Marcus Vance held his breath, a knot of anxiety and hope tightening in his stomach. Zara didn't draw a caricature. She didn't sketch a clown or a smiling sun. Her hand began to move with a speed and confidence that was mesmerizing. She wasn't just drawing. She was thinking, composing, and building a world on the sterile white surface. First, she drew a simple, rectangular frame. A panel. Inside it, she sketched a scene that was instantly recognizable to anyone who had ever lived in a real city neighborhood. A grandmother, her face soft with love, was trying to teach her grandson, a lanky teenager with headphones permanently attached to his ears, the steps to an old dance on a cracked sidewalk. The boy was awkward, embarrassed, but a tiny, genuine smile was breaking through his practiced teenage apathy. Beneath the panel, Zara wrote in clean block letters, "Find your fizz." She moved to the right, drawing a second panel. This one showed two young women sitting on the front steps of a brownstone, laughing so hard that one was doubled over, tears in her eyes. There was no product in their hands, no forced glamour. It was a moment of pure, unscripted connection. Again, she wrote the tagline, Find your fizz. A third panel. A father, home late from a construction job, covered in dust and exhaustion. His young daughter runs to him, not with a demand, but with a drawing she made. He lifts her up, his weary face transforming with a look of overwhelming love and pride. Find your fizz. A fourth panel. A group of friends on a basketball court at dusk. The game is over. They're just sitting, sharing a bottle of water, talking, the easy silence between them more meaningful than any conversation. Find your fizz. She was creating a storyboard, an entire campaign concept, right before their eyes. The funny part wasn't a joke. It was the irony, the wit, the profound truth of it all. The campaign wasn't about the drink. The drink was incidental. The campaign was about the feeling the brand had always claimed to own, but had never truly understood. The fizz wasn't in the can. It was in these small, authentic, deeply human moments of joy, connection, and resilience. It was the effervescence of life itself. Finally, she drew one last large panel. It was a close-up of a hand, an artist's hand, smudged with charcoal, reaching for a can of Aura Fizz. But the can was sitting on a porch railing, next to a sketchbook filled with drawings of the very scenes she had just storyboarded. And the final tagline, the one that tied it all together, was different. She wrote, Aura Fizz, the refreshment for real life. She put the cap back on the marker. The click was deafening. She stepped back from the whiteboard and turned to face the room. She didn't look triumphant. She looked vulnerable, as if she had just ripped open her chest and shown them her heart. Alistair Finch had been watching, his smirk slowly dissolving as the panels filled the board. He had walked over, drawn in by the sheer force of her creation. He stared at the whiteboard, his mouth slightly agape. The blood drained from his face. It was a $5 million ad concept. No, it was more. It was a $50 million brand repositioning. It was a $100 million cultural moment waiting to happen. It was everything he had been paying Eleanor's agency millions to find, and they had brought him nothing but cliches. This was lightning in a bottle. It was authentic. It was viral. It was genius. And it had come from the teenage girl he had just tried to humiliate. He froze. The gears in his mind were spinning, but his body was locked in place. He saw it all in a flash. The TV spots, the social media campaign, the user-generated content of people sharing their own fizz moments. He saw the awards, the glowing articles in Adweek, the soaring stock price. He saw his own salvation, and in the same horrifying instant, he realized the source. A black teenager from the West End, with no agent, no contract, standing in his conference room, having just created his company's future on a whiteboard with a dry erase marker because he told her to draw something funny. The silence was broken by Eleanor Vance, who let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Well, I'll be. The kid's got some chops. But her voice lacked its usual cynical edge. She, too, saw the brilliance of it, and she saw the threat it represented. Alistair finally moved. He straightened his tie, his corporate mask slipping back into place, but his eyes couldn't hide the shock. He cleared his throat. Interesting, he said, his voice strained, a poor imitation of his usual command. He looked at Zara, but he wasn't really seeing her anymore. He was seeing a concept, an asset, a problem to be managed. Very creative. He turned to his assistant. Take a picture of that. Document it. He then looked back at Zara, his expression now a calculated blank slate. Thank you, Ms. Washington. That was illuminating. We'll be in touch. It was a dismissal, a cold, abrupt end to the most electrifying moment of her life. He was taking it. He was taking her idea, her heart, which he had just laid bare on that whiteboard, and he was walking away with it. Marcus watched, his heart sinking. He knew exactly what was happening. Alistair wasn't just impressed, he was plotting. Zara stood there, the marker still in her hand, feeling a sudden bone-deep chill in the climate-controlled room. She had won the battle, but she had the terrifying feeling she was about to lose the war. The ride home on the MARTA train was a blur. Zara sat by the window, the city streaking past in flashes of concrete and color, but she saw none of it. All she could see was the look in Alistair Finch's eyes. It wasn't the look of a man who had discovered a new talent. It was the look of a prospector who had struck gold and was already planning how to stake his claim, cutting out the person who led him to the vein. The initial fire of her defiance had cooled, leaving behind the cold, heavy ash of dread. He had said, "We'll be in touch," but it had the finality of a door slamming shut. She had poured her soul onto that whiteboard, and he had looked at it, called it interesting, and had his assistant photograph it like it was evidence at a crime scene. In a way, she thought, maybe it was. When she got home, her mother was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. Denise looked up, her face etched with worry. "So, how was the big tour of the Promised Land?" Zara slumped into a chair at the small kitchen table. She tried to explain what had happened. The condescending CEO, the challenge, the storyboards she had drawn. As she spoke, the weight of his dismissal pressed down on her. "He told me to draw something funny, Mama." Her voice was small. "So I did. I drew this whole idea for an ad. And I think he liked it. I think he really, really liked it." "Well, that's wonderful, baby," Denise said, her initial relief evident. "Did he offer you a job, an internship?" Zara shook her head, the lump in her throat making it hard to speak. "No, he just took a picture and said they'd be in touch." Denise stopped chopping. She knew that tone. It was the sound of a promise that was never meant to be kept. She came over and sat down, taking Zara's hand. It was cold. "Zara," she said gently, "men like that, they don't see people like us. They see assets or obstacles. You gave him something valuable for free. You have to be prepared for the fact that you may never hear from him again." The words were a painful confirmation of the fear coiling in Zara's gut. "But he can't just take it, can he? I drew it. It's mine. Is your name on it? Did you sign a contract? Honey, in his world, on his whiteboard, the rules are different." Denise's voice was filled with a sad, weary wisdom. "I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself. But now you need to protect yourself." Back at Aura Fizz headquarters, Alistair Finch was moving fast. He called an emergency meeting with Eleanor Vance and his core marketing team. He didn't invite Marcus. In the same conference room, with the photograph of Zara's whiteboard projected onto a massive screen, Alistair paced like a caged tiger. "This is the new direction," he announced, his voice electric with stolen energy. "This is the campaign. Find your fizz. It's raw, it's real, it's about user-generated emotion, it's brilliant." He presented the concept as if it were his own epiphany, a moment of divine inspiration born from his frustration with their stale ideas. He used words like authenticity and grassroots connection, the very concepts he'd been unable to grasp just hours before. Eleanor Vance listened, her expression a careful mask of professional admiration. She was a survivor. She knew a winning idea when she saw one, and she knew better than to question where the boss got it. If Alistair Finch wanted to claim he had laid this golden egg himself, she would be the first to praise its luster. "It's a paradigm shift, Alistair," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Bold, disruptive. My team can flesh this out, have a full pitch deck by Monday. We'll need to budget for focus groups, location scouting." "No," Alistair cut her off. "No focus groups. The beauty of this is its rawness. We don't need to test it. We need to execute it. I want to shoot this in real neighborhoods with real people, not actors. The authenticity is the product. He was parroting Zara's vision, stealing her methodology along with her idea. He was already seeing the canned Lions Awards lining his shelf. Meanwhile, Marcus Vance was sitting at his desk, a cold knot of dread in his stomach. He had seen the look on Alistair's face. He knew what a corporate predator looked like when it scented blood. He had tried to help Zara, to get her talent noticed, and he had inadvertently fed her to the sharks. The guilt was eating at him. His suspicions were confirmed when he saw the flurry of emails about a top-secret new campaign, codenamed Project Fizz. He was pointedly left off the distribution list. He walked past the main conference room and heard Alistair's booming voice, saw the photo of the whiteboard. He didn't need to hear any more. He felt a surge of anger, not just for Zara, but for himself. For every time he had to bite his tongue in a meeting, for every time he had to smile and nod at a microaggression, for every time he saw a good idea from a person of color get dismissed, only to be repackaged and presented by someone else. This was different. This was a theft so brazen, so blatant, it could not be ignored. That evening, Marcus did something that could end his career. He looked up Zara Washington's contact information from the contest entry form. He found her email address and her phone number. He hesitated for a long time, his cursor hovering over the compose button. This was a line he could not uncross. He would be making an enemy of one of the most powerful men in the city. He thought of Zara's face, the mix of defiance and vulnerability. He thought of her art, the uncomfortable truth it told. He thought of his own reflection in the polished chrome of the office, wondering what he stood for if he let this happen. He picked up his personal cell phone and dialed her number. Zara was in her room, staring at a blank canvas, the smell of turpentine doing nothing to soothe her. When her phone buzzed with an unknown number, she almost ignored it. But something made her answer. "Hello? Zara, this is Marcus Vance, from Aura Fizz." Her heart leaped into her throat. "Yes?" "Listen," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We don't have a lot of time, and I'm taking a huge risk calling you. You were right to be worried. Finch is stealing your idea. He's presenting it as his own as we speak." The words hit her like a physical blow. Hearing her worst fear confirmed stole the air from her lungs. What can I do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Right now, nothing. But you need to be smart," Marcus said, his own voice now steady, filled with a new resolve. "You have the original drawings? The ones in your sketchbook?" "Yes, of course." "Good. Don't lose them. Document everything. Write down exactly what happened in that room, who was there, what he said. Date it. And don't talk to anyone else from the company. If they call you, you don't answer. They might try to get you to sign an NDA or a release form for a small amount of money. Don't sign anything. Do you understand?" "Yes," she said, her mind racing. "Zara," Marcus said, his voice softening slightly. "What you did today was incredible. Don't let him take that from you. This is going to be a fight. But you're not in it alone." When she hung up the phone, the despair that had clouded her mind began to recede, replaced by the same cold, defiant fire from the conference room. He had stolen her idea. He had underestimated her. And now, thanks to an unlikely ally, he had no idea she was coming for him. Her mother was right. She had to fight. But she wouldn't just be fighting for herself. She would be fighting for every artist, every creator, every person who had ever been told their voice didn't matter. The days that followed the phone call from Marcus were a strange mix of anxiety and quiet preparation. Zara felt like a soldier in a phony war, waiting for the first shot to be fired. Following Marcus's advice, she meticulously documented everything. She took high-quality photographs of her original sketchbook pages, the ones that contained the seeds of the Find Your Fizz concept. She wrote a detailed, time-stamped account of the meeting in Alistair Finch's office, listing every person she could remember being in the room. It felt like building an arsenal. Her mother, Denise, watched her with a mixture of pride and fear. "You be careful, Zara," she warned one evening. "These are powerful people. They can crush you and not even notice." "I know, Mama," Zara replied, looking up from her sketchbook. "But what's the alternative? Let him just take it? Let him build his empire on my back? I can't." A new hardness had settled in Zara's eyes. The experience had chipped away at her youthful idealism, but it had revealed a core of pure steel beneath. Her art took on a new urgency. Her portraits became more intense, her lines sharper. She was channeling her anger and her resolve onto the page. Meanwhile, Marcus was playing a dangerous game inside Orifiz. He kept his head down, performing his duties with a placid efficiency that belied the storm raging within him. He was a ghost in the machine, listening, watching. He overheard snippets of conversation about Project Fizz. He saw mood boards that were direct copies of Zara's whiteboard sketches. The company was moving forward at lightning speed, pouring millions into pre-production based on her stolen idea. The theft was so complete, so audacious, that it made him sick. Alistair Finch was being lauded internally as a visionary, a leader who had single-handedly pulled the company back from the brink with his authentic new vision. The irony was a bitter pill. Marcus knew that a direct confrontation was career suicide. He needed leverage. He needed to get the story outside the walls of the glass tower. He spent his nights researching, looking for the right person to trust. He couldn't go to the mainstream media. They were too beholden to Orifiz's advertising dollars. He needed someone independent, someone with a reputation for taking on giants. He found her in the form of an investigative blogger named Maya Ritter. Ritter ran a popular industry blog called The Brandalist, known for its scathing, well-researched takedowns of corporate hypocrisy. She had a loyal following and a reputation for protecting her sources. Marcus created an anonymous email account and sent a carefully worded message to Ritter. Subject: The real story behind Orifiz's authentic new campaign. Ms. Ritter, I am an employee at Orifiz. The company is about to launch a massive new campaign being hailed internally as the brainchild of our CEO, Alistair Finch. It's not. The entire concept was created and presented by a 17-year-old artist from Atlanta named Zara Washington, who was at the headquarters as a contest winner. She was dismissed, and her idea was stolen, wholesale. I have evidence. Are you interested? He attached one piece of evidence. A low-resolution photo he had discreetly snapped of the whiteboard just before it was erased. It was blurry, but Zara's distinct drawing style was visible, as was the tagline. He signed the email, "A source inside." He hit send, his heart pounding. He had just lit a fuse. 2 days later, Maya Ritter replied. Her message was brief and to the point. "I'm interested. Send me everything you have, and tell me how to find Zara Washington." Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. He forwarded Maya the photos of Zara's sketchbook, her written account, and her contact information, after getting Zara's permission in a brief, coded text message. He knew he was putting Zara in the spotlight, but it was their only move. Maya Ritter was a bulldog. She called Zara, her voice a rapid-fire burst of questions. She was tough, cynical, and thorough. Zara, clutching the phone in her bedroom, told her story, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger as she recounted the details of the meeting. Maya listened, interjecting with sharp questions. "Did he ever explicitly say the idea was his in front of you?" "No, he just said it was interesting and dismissed me." "Who else was in the room? Give me names." Zara gave her the list she had compiled. Maya recognized Eleanor Vance's name immediately. "Eleanor's a shark," Maya said. "She'll protect Finch to protect herself. This is good. This is messy." For the next week, Maya worked her sources. She called disgruntled former employees of the ad agency. She spoke to freelance creatives who had been burned by Orifiz in the past. She built a picture of a corporate culture under Alistair Finch that was rife with idea appropriation and a dismissive attitude toward junior talent, especially women and people of color, the story was coming together. The final piece was a comment from the company itself. Maya sent a detailed email to Aura Fizz's public relations department, CCing Alistair Finch and Eleanor Vance. She laid out the entire accusation in stark detail and gave them 24 hours to respond. Inside the glass tower, the email landed like a bomb. Panic erupted. Alistair Finch, who had been riding high on the success of his vision, was blindsided. He stormed into the legal department, his face purple with rage. "Kill this! I don't care how! Send a cease and desist! Sue her! Sue the girl!" he roared. The company's lawyers, however, were more pragmatic. "Alistair, suing a journalist for asking questions is a terrible look. And suing a teenager? It would be a PR catastrophe. It would confirm her story. So what do? We issue a denial," the lead counsel said. "A firm one. We state that our campaign was developed internally over a period of months. We call her claims baseless and opportunistic. We paint her as a disgruntled contest winner looking for her 15 minutes of fame." It was a classic corporate strategy: deny, deflect, and discredit. They sent their polished, lawyer-approved statement to Maya Ritter. It was exactly the response she had expected. It was the last piece she needed for her story. The night before the article was set to go live, Marcus met Zara in a small, quiet coffee shop in Grant Park, far from the prying eyes of the corporate world. It was the first time they had seen each other since the tour. "Are you ready for this?" he asked her, his expression serious. "When this story breaks, they're going to come after you. They'll try to paint you as a liar, an extortionist. It's going to get ugly." Zara took a sip of her tea, her hands steady around the warm cup. "Let them try," she said, a calm fire in her eyes. "They think I'm just some kid they can roll over. They don't know me. They don't know where I come from." She looked out the window at the park, at the families and the friends, the real people living the real lives she had drawn on that whiteboard. "He told me to draw something funny," she said, a small, wry smile on her lips. "I don't think he's going to be laughing tomorrow." Marcus looked at her, at this 17-year-old girl who was about to take on a billion-dollar corporation, and he felt a profound sense of awe. The first ripple was about to hit the shore, and it was going to be a tsunami. Maya Ritter's article went live at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. The headline was explosive. "Find your fizz or steal your spark. Aura Fizz CEO accused of lifting 5 Matur's campaign concept from 17-year-old artist." The article was a masterclass in investigative journalism. It laid out the timeline with damning precision, from the Atlanta's Aura contest to the fateful meeting in Alistair's office. It featured high-resolution images of Zara's original sketchbook pages, side by side with the blurry photo of the whiteboard. The visual evidence was undeniable. Zara's style, her concepts, her taglines, they were all there. The story included Zara's powerful first-person account, which was filled with a quiet dignity that made it impossible to dismiss. It also included Aura Fizz's cold, corporate denial, which, when juxtaposed with Zara's heartfelt testimony, read as hollow and defensive. But the kill shot was a quote from an anonymous former designer at Eleanor Vance's ad agency. "Is anyone surprised? That place is an idea graveyard. You pitch something in a meeting, it gets shot down. 6 months later, it shows up in a deck, presented by a senior creative who claims they just thought of it. It's the culture. Finch's Aura Fizz is just the biggest client, so the stakes are higher." The story spread like wildfire. It was the perfect narrative for the digital age, a David versus Goliath struggle, a young, authentic black creator against a powerful, out-of-touch white CEO. The hashtag #StealYourSpark started trending on Twitter within an hour. People were enraged on Zara's behalf. Artists, writers, and creators of all kinds shared the article, adding their own stories of having their work appropriated by powerful entities. For Zara, the day was a whirlwind. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Friends from school, family members, and complete strangers were sending her messages of support. She tried to focus on her schoolwork, but it was impossible. She was no longer just Zara Washington, art kid from the West End. She was a symbol. At the Aura-Fizz headquarters, the atmosphere was one of controlled chaos. The communications team was in full-blown crisis mode, fielding calls from major news outlets. The stock, which had been climbing in anticipation of the new campaign, took a sharp nosedive. Alistair Finch locked himself in his office. He read the article again and again, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He felt the narrative, his carefully constructed reality slipping from his grasp. In his mind, he hadn't stolen it. He had recognized its potential. He had elevated it. He was the visionary. She was just the raw material. But the world didn't see it that way. They saw him as a thief. His rage turned on Marcus Vance. "Find him!" he bellowed to his assistant. "I want him in my office now." But Marcus was gone. He had emailed his resignation an hour before the story broke, citing a toxic work environment that is fundamentally at odds with my personal and professional ethics. He had walked out of the building with his head held high, leaving his keycard on his empty desk. He had sacrificed his career, but he had saved his soul. The pressure on Alistair was immense. The board of directors, a notoriously conservative group of old money investors, called an emergency meeting for the following day. Their concern wasn't ethics, it was the bottom line. The scandal was tarnishing the brand, costing them millions in market capitalization and jeopardizing the very campaign that was supposed to save them. That evening, Alistair went home to his sprawling Tudor mansion in Tuxedo Park, a world of manicured lawns and silent old money. He poured himself a tumbler of expensive scotch, but it did nothing to calm the inferno in his gut. His daughter, Chloe, a sharp, socially conscious 20-year-old home from college, found him brooding in his study. Chloe had seen the article. Her friends had been texting her about it all day. She looked at her father, a man she had always seen as invincible, and saw someone cornered and afraid. "Dad," she said, her voice quiet. "Is it true?" "It's a shakedown," Alistair snapped, his voice rough. "A baseless attack by a disgruntled kid and a parasite blogger." "I read it. I saw her drawings," Chloe pressed, refusing to be intimidated. "They look exactly like the mood boards you showed me. The ones you were so proud of." Alistair slammed his glass down on the mahogany desk. "I had the vision. I saw how to make it work, how to turn a doodle into a global campaign. But was it your doodle, Dad?" Chloe's question was soft, but it cut through his bluster like a surgeon's scalpel. "She's 17. She went into your office and you humiliated her. You dared her to be creative, and when she was, you took it from her. Don't you see how that looks?" "I don't care how it looks," he roared. "You should," she fired back, her voice rising with passion. "This is everything you claim not to be. You give money to the arts, you sit on boards for diversity initiatives, you talk about corporate responsibility. Was all of that a lie? Is this who you really are?" Her words hit him harder than any shareholder report. He looked at his daughter, at the disappointment and shame in her eyes, and for the first time, a crack appeared in his armor of self-righteousness. He had been so focused on winning, on saving his company and his reputation, that he had lost sight of his own humanity. He had seen Zara Washington as a means to an end, not as a person. He had failed his daughter's image of him. The next day, Alistair walked into the boardroom to face his board of directors. The air was thick with tension. He had a choice. He could continue to lie, to fight, to try and crush the 17-year-old girl who had exposed him. Or he could do the one thing he hadn't done in his entire corporate career. He could admit he was wrong. He thought of Chloe's face. He thought of the fire in Zara's eyes. He looked at the grim, unforgiving faces of the board members. His carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. And he knew, with a sickening certainty, that he had no one to blame but himself. The reckoning was here. The boardroom at Aura Fizz was Alistair Finch's Coliseum, and he was the gladiator about to be thrown to the lions. The board members, a collection of grim-faced men and women who measured life in quarterly earnings, sat around the polished mahogany table. They didn't care about the morality of the situation. They cared about the optics and the stock price, both of which were in freefall. Alistair had spent a sleepless night wrestling with his daughter's words and the impending doom of his career. He had 2 speeches prepared in his mind. One was a defiant, aggressive defense, painting Zara as an extortionist and the media as jackals. The other was something he had never delivered before, a surrender. He looked at the hostile faces waiting for him to speak, and made his choice. "I made a mistake," he began, his voice quiet but clear. The room, which had been buzzing with hushed, angry conversations, fell silent. "I made a grave error in judgment. The core concept for the Find Your Fizz campaign was, in fact, brought to my attention by a young artist named Zara Washington. In my enthusiasm for the idea, I failed to give her the proper credit. I was wrong, and I apologize." The confession hung in the air, stunning the board members more than any lie could have. They had expected a fight, not a capitulation. "The damage to the brand is catastrophic," one of the board members, a stern man named Henderson, finally said. "An apology isn't enough. This requires a solution." "I have one," Alistair said, his voice gaining a sliver of its old confidence. "We're not going to crush Zara Washington. We're going to hire her." The idea was met with stunned silence, then a flurry of objections. Hire a teenager? A high school student? The one who had just publicly humiliated them? "It's the only move we have," Alistair argued, leaning forward. "Denying it makes us look like guilty liars. Fighting her makes us look like corporate bullies. But if we embrace her, if we bring her in, not as an intern, but as a paid creative consultant on the campaign she created, we change the narrative completely. We're not thieves, we're talent scouts. We discovered a prodigy. We're giving a voice to the voiceless. It's a PR masterstroke." He saw the gears turning in their heads. They were beginning to see the cold, cynical brilliance of the strategy. It was a way to turn a disaster into a victory. Henderson nodded slowly. "Get it done, Alistair. Fix this mess. And it better work." The first step was a public apology. Not the hollow, lawyer-vetted statement from before, but a personal one from Alistair Finch. It was broadcast across all of Aura Fizz's social media channels. In the video, Alistair looked humbled, tired. He admitted his failing, praised Zara's breathtaking talent, and announced the company's intention to make it right. For Zara, watching the video on her laptop in her living room, it was a surreal moment. She saw a man stripped of his power, forced into a public act of contrition. But she wasn't naive. She knew this wasn't about remorse. It was about damage control. The phone call came an hour later. It was Alistair Finch himself. His voice was devoid of its former arrogance. "Zara," he said, "I am profoundly sorry. What I did was inexcusable. Your talent is immense, and you deserved respect. I would like to offer you the position of creative consultant for the Find Your Fizz campaign. We will pay you a generous fee, and you will have a seat at the table as we bring your vision to life." Zara listened, her heart pounding. This was the moment. She could just say yes, take the money and claim her victory. But Marcus's voice echoed in her head. "Be smart." "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice steady, "I appreciate the apology, but I won't be discussing any offers with you directly. My representative will be in touch with your legal team." "Your representative?" Alistair asked, confused. "Yes," Zara said coolly. "You'll be hearing from him shortly." She hung up the phone and immediately called Marcus. He had been waiting. "He bit," she said. "I knew he would," Marcus replied, a smile in his voice. "Now the real work begins." Marcus, using his severance package and his intimate knowledge of corporate negotiations, had assembled a small, formidable team. He brought in a sharp, young entertainment lawyer who specialized in intellectual property rights for artists. Together, they became Zara's representatives. The negotiations were intense. Orafiz's lawyers initially presented a standard work-for-hire contract with a generous-sounding, but ultimately lowball, one-time fee. Marcus and the lawyer countered with a list of non-negotiable demands. First, the fee was tripled. It wasn't just payment for an idea, it was compensation for intellectual property theft, emotional distress, and reputational damage. Second, Zara would not be an employee. She would be an independent consultant. She would retain ownership of her original characters and artwork. Orafiz would be licensing her concept for this specific campaign. This was crucial. It meant she, not the company, held the power over her own creations. Third, she demanded final creative approval on all aspects of the campaign, from casting to location scouting to the final edit of the commercials. Her vision would not be diluted by a committee. But the final demand was the one that truly showed Zara's character. It was her idea, born from the anger and hope of the past few weeks. "We are demanding," the lawyer told Orafiz's legal team, "that the company establish the Aura Spark Foundation, a $5 million endowed fund managed by an independent board dedicated to providing scholarships, materials, and mentorship to young, underrepresented artists in Atlanta. My client will have a permanent seat on that board." Orafiz's lawyers balked. This was unprecedented, but Marcus and Zara held firm. They knew they had all the leverage. The public was on their side. The board wanted the problem to go away. To refuse these terms now would reignite the scandal. Alistair Finch, humbled and cornered, approved every single demand. He signed the contract that gave a 17-year-old girl more creative control than any ad agency in the country, and committed his company to funding the very kind of talent he had once so casually dismissed. Zara Washington had not just won. She had changed the rules of the game. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement. The deal was done. Now, it was time to make the ad. The first day of the commercial shoot felt like a dream. The location wasn't a sterile soundstage, but a sun-drenched, mural-adorned street in Zara's own West End neighborhood. The air hummed with the controlled chaos of a film set, but the energy was different. It was joyful, authentic. The cast members weren't actors from a central casting database. They were Zara's neighbors, friends, and family. The grandmother teaching her grandson to dance was Ms. Evelyn from down the street. The friends laughing on the steps were Zara's best friends from high school. And at the center of it all, in a director's chair with her name stenciled on the back, was Zara Washington. She was a natural. She moved through the set with a quiet confidence, her sketchbook in hand, which she used instead of a traditional shot list. She spoke to the director of photography not in technical jargon, but in terms of emotion and light. "I want to feel the warmth of the sun on their faces," she'd say, pointing to a scene. "I want to see the pride in his eyes, not just his smile." The professional crew, initially skeptical of taking direction from a teenager, was quickly won over by her clear vision and her profound respect for the people and the place she was filming. She wasn't creating a fictional world. She was simply capturing the beauty of a real one. Alistair Finch was there, as stipulated in the contract. He was a ghost on his own set, standing on the periphery, watching the proceedings with a complex expression of awe, regret, and grudging respect. He saw Zara in her element, commanding the set with a grace and authority that he, with all his power and money, could never replicate. She wasn't just executing a concept, she was sharing a piece of her soul. He was witnessing the very authenticity he had tried to manufacture, and he realized with a humbling clarity that it could never be bought or stolen, only nurtured. Marcus was there too, standing beside Zara, acting as her producer, her advisor, and her friend. He had found a new purpose, a new career path he had never imagined. He was no longer a cog in a corporate machine, but a champion for new voices. Seeing Zara's vision come to life was a victory more satisfying than any promotion he had ever received at Aura Fizz. There was a moment during a lunch break when Alistair approached Zara. He looked awkward, out of place. "It's incredible," he said, gesturing to the bustling set. "What you're creating here, it's alive." Zara looked at him, her expression unreadable. "This was always here, Mr. Finch," she said simply. "You just weren't looking." The words weren't an accusation, but a statement of fact. They landed with a quiet wait. Alistair just nodded, unable to form a reply. He finally understood. His world of boardrooms and profit margins was a pale imitation of the richness of the world she inhabited, the world he had tried to sell back to people in a can. Later that day, they were filming the final scene, the one from her storyboard that showed the artist's hand reaching for the can of Aura Fizz. Zara had decided that she would be the one in the shot. It was her story, after all. As she sat on the familiar steps of her own back porch, the sketchbook in her lap, the camera crew setting up the shot, her mother, Denise, came out to watch. She stood beside Marcus, tears welling in her eyes. "I was so scared for her," Denise whispered to him. "I just wanted her to be safe, to have a practical life." "She's more than safe," Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on Zara. "She's powerful. She's not just making an ad, Denise. She's building a future. For herself, and for a lot of other kids who will come after her because of the foundation she built." Denise watched her daughter, no longer a little girl with a hobby, but a young woman in full command of her destiny. The weight of worry that had settled on Denise's shoulders for so many years began to lift, replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride. The director called for action. The cameras rolled. Zara's hand, smudged with the real charcoal she had been using all day, reached out and picked up the can of Aura Fizz. She took a sip, and then she looked up, directly into the camera lens. She didn't offer a big, fake commercial smile. Instead, she gave a small, genuine, knowing smile. It was a look that said, "I see you. I know you. This is for us." It was the most powerful shot of the campaign. It was real. It was true. It was the culmination of a journey that had started with a moment of humiliation and had ended in a moment of pure, unassailable triumph. Zara Washington had not only found her fizz, she had shown the world where to find its own. The Find Your Fizz campaign launched a month later. It wasn't just a commercial, it was a cultural event. The ads, infused with the warmth and authenticity of Zara's vision, were an instant sensation. They didn't feel like ads at all. They felt like short films, intimate portraits of everyday life. The tagline, "The refreshment for real life," resonated deeply with a public tired of glossy artifice. The campaign went viral in a way Aura Fizz's marketing department had only ever dreamed of. People started using the Hohachwashimsuri Find Your Fizz hashtag to share their own moments of joy and connection. A child's first steps, a reunion of old friends, a quiet sunset. The brand, once seen as stale and out of touch, was suddenly relevant, beloved, and cool. Sales skyrocketed. The company's stock soared past its previous highs. Alistair Finch was hailed as a genius, not for his creativity, but for his courage and vision in recognizing and empowering Zara's talent. Articles in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal praised his masterful handling of a potential crisis, reframing his story as one of enlightened leadership. Alistair accepted the accolades with a newfound humility. The experience had changed him. He still cared about the bottom line, but he had learned a valuable and costly lesson about the difference between value and worth. He became a genuine champion for the Aura Spark Foundation, ensuring it was more than just a PR stunt. Zara, however, remained the heart of the story. She was featured in magazines, interviewed on television, and hailed as the new voice of her generation. But she handled the fame with a grace and maturity that belied her age. She stayed in her neighborhood, continued her studies, and poured her energy into the foundation, ensuring it reached the kids who needed it most. The ones sketching in notebooks in neighborhoods that corporate executives never visited. She and Marcus became a formidable team. He managed the business side of her burgeoning career, protecting her from the industry's predatory elements and helping her navigate her new reality. They were partners, bound by a shared victory and a deep, mutual respect that was slowly blossoming into something more. One crisp autumn afternoon, months after the campaign had launched, Zara and Alistair found themselves at the same event, the first ever awards ceremony for the Aura Spark Foundation. It was held at a community arts center in the heart of the city, a world away from the corporate headquarters. The room was filled with talented, hopeful young artists, the first recipients of the scholarships Zara had fought for. Alistair found her standing by a wall, looking at a display of the students' work. "You did this," he said, his voice quiet. "All of this." Zara smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "We did this," she corrected him gently. "It took both of us." It was an act of profound grace. She was acknowledging his role, not in the creation, but in the eventual outcome. She was offering him a measure of absolution, a chance to be part of the solution rather than just the cause of the problem. In that moment, Alistair finally saw her, not as an asset, a threat, or a symbol, but as the remarkable human being she was. "Thank you, Zara," he said, his voice thick with an emotion she had never heard from him before. The story of the white CEO and the black teen girl became a legend in the advertising world, a cautionary tale about arrogance and a powerful lesson in the true meaning of authenticity. But for Zara, it was never about the money or the fame. It was about the fundamental right to have one's voice heard, one's vision respected. Her journey had been about more than just an ad campaign. It was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It proved that true value lies not in what can be bought or sold, but in the connections we forge, the love we share, and the beauty we find in the real, unscripted moments of our lives. It was a story of resilience, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of the incredible things that can happen when one person dares to speak their truth, even if it's just with a drawing on a whiteboard. Zara Washington had been told to draw something funny, and in the end, she had given the world something beautiful, something true, and something that would inspire others to find their own fizz for years to come. That was the story of Zara Washington and Alistair Finch, a testament to the fact that the most powerful voice isn't always the loudest, and true value can't be found on a balance sheet. It's a reminder that authenticity is a superpower, and your story, your vision, deserves to be seen. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story about the underdogs, the visionaries, and the game changers. What did you think of Zara's final move with the foundation? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.